All right, so now that we talked about how we can start looking to get our opponent from seated to supine, once we get to supine, let's assume that we haven't cut an angle, because sometimes by nature of us threatening, putting them to exposing their back and get them reacting to fall to their back, sometimes you can just end up with an angle, but sometimes, or probably more often than not, it's the case where your partner's on their back and you're in front of them. So in this situation, how would you go about trying to get an angle from here? Because with a good partner, like, you can't just walk in one direction, because from there are many different ways your partner can look to square up to you. He can like step on you, he can use his hand on your shin, he can use his elbows on the mat, like even if we're too far out, like he can plant his foot, elbows on the mat. There's so many ways he can turn to continue facing you. So a lot of my goal is to be one, like, it's kind of this battle of height, really trying to like lower your level, and two, trying to get this angle. So how do we go about this? So especially when I'm in front of my partner, I want to use feints to really try to fake them in one direction. And then the degree in which I can feint can vary. Because a feint, the effectiveness of the feint is only going to be contingent on the degree in which he reacts to the feint. So when thinking about the quality of a feint, it's all predicated on what's their reaction. How are they reacting to the feint? It's not how believable is what I'm doing. Because, I mean, part of it is because that's what's really going to make someone react. Because if I just do this, Lynn's not going to think I'm actually passing that side. Versus, like, if I'm actually committing weight here, and then I can switch sides, this is going to be a lot more believable. So let's talk about the different ways that we can look to feint in this situation. So the varying degrees of feint, you could just bring your foot across and tap it to the mat and not even like put weight, depending on if you've already presented the threat of passing that direction. Like, let's say our first form of engagement is me circling this way, and he feels as though, okay, now this is a threat. I'm really pressuring this pass. He recovers. Now, if I fake going this side, he might really try to react to face me. Obviously, you do want to create almost like a similar situation so that they react, because if the way I cut the angle is through my rear leg, right? And if I use my lead leg next, he might not react necessarily. So we could also use our rear leg to feint. And as he squares up, go back here. And once again, depending on how he reacts. So if I go here and I feel like he's not reacting, I'm going to continue passing this side. Versus if he's reacting a little bit more prominently, often what I like to do is I just like to take a step here. And sometimes you don't have to put weight. You can just touch and go. But often you're going to commit, and they see that you're committing weight. And then as they start looking to face, you can push off of this leg to start looking to cut an angle, and either take a cross step, or even the use of back steps are also strong in these situations. But understanding that you're going to have to feint to varying degrees. And honestly, a feint could even be, especially like, you'll see this a lot where it's like kind of stagnant, where it's like, if we're being cautious, he's maybe trying to engage with his legs, I'm trying to be cautious, where like small movements can actually elicit big reactions. So it's kind of your job to read the situation where, okay, what is he biting on and what is he ignoring? And then if he's ignoring something, you can just, it no longer has to stay a feint. So let's say I'm feinting here, and he's not really reacting. I can just take this cross step and then actually capitalize on this opportunity, since I've actually conditioned him not to react to this feint. So this is one, I think, very important way, especially once they're on their back and they're doing a good job really squaring up to you. There's some people who aren't very good at squaring up, like whether it be framing, whether it be moving on their elbows, but that's not the situation we're like really training for. We want to be able to do this against people who are relatively good. So yeah. All right, so now we're going to go over, once we actually get them down to their back, and besides feinting, how are we actually going to be able to gain an angle on our partner? And generally it's going to be through two ways. It's either going to be through moving yourself or moving them. And we'll kind of see in which situation one is more appropriate than the other. So we have to basically, the main factors we're considering is whether my partner is in a state of retraction or in a state of extension. If his legs are extended like this, it's going to be pretty hard for me to like move around him, just because now he has a good connection to me. Versus when he's in a state of retraction, from here, it's going to be a lot easier for me to move around him. So in situations where my partner's legs are extended and I feel like he can kind of square up to me, this is when I'm going to try use my own connection to his feet to actually misdirect him. In terms of misdirecting, an important factor to take into consideration is the tension through your partner's legs. So let's say I just throw his legs from here. It's actually not going to have that great of an effect. However, what I'm looking for is I'm making connection to his legs, and then if I can feel some degree of tension, especially when he starts to face me, right? That's when I can really start getting like this kind of Beyblade effect, where from here, I'm not just like trying to throw his legs by, I'm waiting for there to be tension through his legs so I can really try get an angle. And obviously this is a little bit exaggerated because we're demonstrating, but from here, this is when you're going to be in situations where you feel like, okay, wow, he's really far away from me, where I can then use this as a means to square up. And even if they do actually use their hand to start posting, this is a great opportunity for us to close distance and really try to capitalize on this angle. And then in situations where his knees are tight to his chest, I feel like we can definitely still move our partner here and turn, but because they're retracted, I find that the angle isn't going to be so significant. So what I'm actually going to try doing in these situations is try moving in this kind of direction where I move myself as opposed to trying to move them. I can move them a little bit, but most of this is going to be trying to move myself to fill up this space as opposed to flanking to get that angle. So generally it's going to be the case where you're doing both at the same time, but when they're extended, I like to throw their legs by a little bit more, versus when they're retracted, I try to move myself a little bit more. All right, so now let's talk about actually cutting an angle, besides feinting, but how my partner's body may affect my ability to cut an angle and how I might go about doing this. And so the main factors we want to take into consideration, like when lens supine, is two things where we're actually discussing this earlier, just to really try to clarify, where either it's going to be this, like, they're very much related, but whether my partner's legs are retracted or extended, and like at the same time, whether my partner is convexed or concaved. So understand that when my partner's legs are extended away from his chest, right from here, he limits my ability to cut an angle because he has a connection to me. However, if I do manage to cut an angle, this is going to give me excellent opportunity to move into this space that's kind of created by him bringing his knees away from his chest. And often what's the case is that when my partner is extending his legs, he's going to kind of have his hips flat to the mat, back flat to the mat, which is going to increase the surface area of his back to the mat and make it harder for me to throw this by. However, sometimes, especially as we look to move into this area, like let's say his legs are extended and I can make it so that I can move my body in a way where he's no longer stepping on me and I'm moving into the space, my partner looks to square up to me. He needs to bring his knees to his chest, right? And he's going to use this to reduce the surface area of his back to the mat. And therefore, now he can start looking to square up. And now we can start looking to use a combination of our own movement and us throwing our partner by to actually successfully cut this angle. So it's important to take into consideration the posture they're in and how that affects your options. If my partner is bringing his knees close to his chest, from here it's going to be actually quite easy for me to start looking to move him. And then maybe he's like, okay, I don't want him to cut an angle on me, I'm going to extend. And then in these situations of extension, we can try and bring their knees away from their chest. And as they react to this, we can switch back. So taking into consideration how the extension of their legs and their connection to the mat may affect our ability to